So welcome to the Harvard Square Business Association breakfast celebrating Women's History Month. We are delighted to be here this morning at this fabulous theater. I think we're calling it Arrow Street Arts. Is that right, David? Yeah. By one time we were calling it 2 Arrow Street, but it's Arrow Street Arts, and I am delighted to introduce you to David Altschuler. David is the brains behind this current iteration of this incredible theater. And I was here probably maybe 3 years ago. And it was just a construction site, and he had some big dreams and big plans, and here we are, and David's going to tell us a little bit about how that happened. David?
Good morning. Well, yes, we're live. Good morning, and welcome to Arrow Street Arts. When COVID hit, I guess it's 5 years ago, really, right around now. And before that, I had been sort of living in Cambridge and spending happy-go-lucky 6 days a week at my offices in Brattle Street and all, and having a good time. And suddenly the world was turned on end, and it was really hard for a lot of folks, but for me, I ended up leaving town, and I went to Florida. I was going to be there for a week of spring break, and I ended up staying 5 months, and then I came back, and I didn't go here. I went to rural Vermont because I do computer things, and so as long as I had computer monitors somewhere and telephones, I could sort of work from anywhere, as we all sort of learned to do and work from home. And we closed the offices, and we left, and life was terrifying. It's hard for me to remember how crazy it was, but we soldiered on through good and sometimes bad things. And then when things began to change, like over 2 years later, I'd always thought myself to be a city kid. And I was saying, okay, I'm gonna come back, or do I wanna live in one of these other places? And I ended up figuring out that I'm not a city kid, that I really don't like particularly living inside Boston. I don't particularly like living in Cambridge, but I like what I can do when I'm in these places. I like restaurants, I like going to theater, I like going to music, I like going to art museums. And so it isn't actually living in a city that makes it exciting for me. It's what you can do when you're in the city and what you can access that you can't if you're living even in beautiful places looking at a cow somewhere. And so when I'm sort of coming back and thinking about, if that's my experience, what can I do to be able to work with other people who are either directly or indirectly feel the same way, at least about the importance of doing those civic things. I was looking for something to do, and then my wife, about a dozen years ago, created a thing called Moonbox Productions with a one weekend play performance of Godspell at the little Brattle Theater, not far from here. And she'd done that, and it got really well, too well, that's another story, but she went and had a really great time there, and she'd been looking for a home. And so against all this backdrop, Harvard had decided, as we all know, to fundamentally move their arts world and a lot of their stuff over across the river to Alston. And they had decided then to basically close what had been the Oberon. And so all these factors came together. I was trying to figure out, what do I want to do to re-engage with the city? My wife wanted a home for Moonbox, and Oberon was going away. And so all this came together, so I then said, okay, what am I going to do with this? And the two people that I called first, and tried to think about this, to work together intellectually. One was Gita Pradhan over at the Cambridge Community Foundation. I don't know, is Gita here today? Anyway, so Gita, because of the civic nature of it. The other one was Denise. Because if I was going to go and sort of double down in my relationship to Harvard Square, I really wanted to have partners that would understand things. I didn't even, not that I not know the answers to the questions, I didn't even know the questions to ask. And so these other people I thought would help me out a whole bunch. And so that was about, she said 3 years ago, it took a year and a half to negotiate with Harvard to be able to do what's now a very long-term deal. And it's taken us the last year and a half plus to gut things. And at this point, we are 50% larger than Oberon ever was. This stage is actually redone larger. There was a Looks Clothing, some of you may know here before. Really sweet, wonderful person there. She was interested in moving sort of online, moving away from the bricks and mortar side. And so we were able to expand, and there's a studio over there. And then the same thing here is, Oberon had sort of made this into a tunnel, so some of you may have known, it's like basically they painted the windows black and they closed it in, and so we just opened a lot of things up and did some things on the second floor. So that's a little bit of the background. So where are we going now? Well, for us to survive and thrive, we care deeply about accessibility, and accessibility is a really big word for us. Everything from wheelchair access to hearing systems to other basically neurodivergent, all that kind of good stuff. We want to be able to do that, but also financial accessibility. I said my first call was to Gita because we knew that the arts groups are greatly stressed. This is not new, this goes back pre-COVID too. And so we want to be able to have some community accessibility for different types of arts groups. We had no idea how many groups wanted dance space, for example. And so we're on a little semi-sprung floor. We have a full sprung floor in the studio out there. We did an announcement, a year and a half ago, looking for groups that wanted to come and perform here, community-oriented groups. It was 6 weeks, 172 applications. And so, not individual, 172 different groups wanting to do things. And so, we're balancing all these things out, but we're also taking a look at financial sustainability through having a model where we're doing private events or looking to do it, then corporate things, and we've got a kitchen that's opening in this next month. So anyway, that's a little bit of the backdrop here. We've got lots of different types. Take a look at the things. We've got to get lots of dance. We've got people from Crowns, another Moonbox production here. Celebrity series is this week. And so it's really, and then we'll have some of the live music going on in the fall with different types of bluegrass and all sorts of different types of music groups here. But that's a little bit of a thing there. Denise, as I said, was in right there in the very first couple of people to call about this. And so if you have any follow-on questions or interests or things, you can always find her and she'll find me or somebody else in the organization. And I just want to welcome all of you. And so thank you for being here. And I'll turn it back over to Denise.
Thank you, David. At this point, I would like to introduce some special guests. So, as David mentioned, Moonbox Productions. I'm not sure if any of you here had seen some of their productions before, but we've worked very closely with Shami, David's wife, and she does an extraordinary job with spaces that are just unusual, and now she has this space, which is not unusual. It's pretty extraordinary, so thank you for that, David. So Moonbox Productions is thrilled to present gospel music, musical Crowns, and we have folks from Crowns here today. So we have the director, Regine Vital, and we have Mildred Walker, who's playing Mother Shaw. She will be performing for us a gospel piece, and David Coleman is the music director, and he's here on the piano. So please come on down and entertain us.
So before Mildred and David wow you with their amazing talents, I'll just tell you a little bit about Crowns. Crowns is a play with music by Regina Taylor. It was first performed in the early 2000s. And whenever anybody asks me about it, I just say, sort of as a joke, but also seriously, it's a play about church ladies and their hats. And the thing about that is, I mean, in Black culture, the church lady, capital C, capital L, is iconic. She reigns supreme as like a matriarch in any Black community that you go to, whether or not you are religious, you know, and are attached to a church lady. And more often than not, these are the women who, yes, they strike a certain fear in you on Sundays if you dare to not pay attention to the sermon. But they are also stewards of not just the church, but of Black community and Black life. And in Crowns, which is a story about a young girl who's in a very, very difficult time in her life, it is the women whom she doesn't know, with the exception of Mother Shaw, who is her grandmother, but it is these women who, through their life stories that are sort of, their stories that they tell catalyzed through stories about their hats, they help her find her way in a really, really hard time. And so this play, yes, it's about church ladies in their hats. It's also based on this beautiful picture book about church ladies in their hats. But it's also about community. It's about honestly, for me, the importance of women, especially women with experience and wisdom and who've lived lives, who can help guide the younger generation. And it's about, what happens when, you need a little bit of faith, a lot of love and a bit of faith to get through this life that we're living. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Mildred, who is going to sing If I Could Help Somebody, accompanied by David. Enjoy. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can tell somebody that they're traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a good woman ought, if I can bring back beauty to all abroad, if I can share love's message as the Master taught, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. No, my living shall not be in vain. If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. No, 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 my living shall not be in vain. Oh, if I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain.
Thank you, Mildred, David, Regine. Fabulous. Whoa. Did you enjoy that? So with that, I would like to introduce Councilor Patty Nolan from the City of Cambridge, who will bring us official greetings to this event this morning. Councilor Nolan.
Yes, official greetings. Oh, I can't even see you because of the lights, but I have my notes. Official greetings. We are a city. If you read the email from Denise listing the 17-page long list of women-owned businesses in Cambridge, you'll know we are a city well represented in that realm, and I'm proud to say I'm on the city council where women have a majority of the seats. And Caroline Hunter, my sister in service on the school committee, is here, another body, elected body in the city where women have a majority, 4 of the 7 seats. So welcome all, and I always love Women's History Month. I spent a couple years of my life doing it, so I will just share a couple of my favorite heroines from history. And I'm always, when I read this quote, let me tell you what I think about it. Here's some quotes from one of my hallmarks or heroines. If it were customary to send little girls to school and teach them the same subjects as are taught to boys, they would learn just as fully and would understand the subtleties of all arts and sciences. A woman's worth should not be measured by her beauty or fertility, but by her intelligence and character. And if anyone tells me that books are full of women characterized as flighty, fickle, changeable, susceptible, and inconstant, and that is just who they are, I would say women did not write those books, nor include the material, and they would not include the material which attacks them and their morals. Those who would plead their cause in the absence of an opponent can invent to their heart's content, can pontificate without taking into account the opposite point of view, and keep the best arguments for themselves. For aggressors are always quick to attack those who have no means of defense. But if women had written those books, I know full well the subject would have been handled differently. They know that they stand wrongfully accused and that the cake has not been divided up equally, for the strongest take the lion's share, and the one who does the sharing out keeps the biggest portion for himself. That was written by Christine de Pizan in 1364, published in the Book of City of Ladies in 1405, which on the one hand gives me hope because we can look to history for wonderful women to give us courage, and yet it's like, oh my gosh, we're fighting the same fight as literally centuries ago, so it's really hard to know. I think I'm going to take the former, the hope. And then one more local people. Sarah and Angelina Grimke are really the quintessential Massachusetts and Cantabrigians. They were born to a very wealthy family in the South. Do many of you know who they are? They have really strong Boston connections. They were sisters born to a wealthy slave-owning family in the South, and they ended up becoming Quakers, becoming incredibly active in the anti-slavery movement. And part of what I love about them is they ended up having to move to Philadelphia because their books were burned and they were threatened in the South once they started writing about abolition. They ended up in Boston, where in Boston they ended up, one of the key things they did, speaking of education, which Christine de Pizan had railed against also, the lack of opportunities for women in France in the Middle Ages, is they ended up educating their brother's children from an enslaved woman and ended up educating them enough that the two boys, one of them ended up at Harvard Law School and the other ended up at Princeton Theological Seminary. So they took some of their own family history and said, we're going to right this wrong by providing an educational opportunity to people who would not have it otherwise. And they did it while they were in the Boston area. So let's take heart from Sarah and Angelina Grimke and the hundreds and thousands of women across the city, the state, and the world who are working to ensure that as women's history gets uplifted, we realize we are standing on lots of different shoulders and we can make progress. So happy Women's History Month, and thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Counselor. And you know, as usual, I'm going to just change one thing. Carolyn Hunter, would you come up, please? And people just need to know this wonderful woman. And maybe you'd like to say a few words about who you are and what you've been doing here in the city of Cambridge.
Well, I am certainly heartwarmed by the church ladies because I am the daughter of a church lady. My mother passed away at 101.5 years, and she had so many hats and in hat boxes. And she was the matriarch of the church. She last volunteered at 96 years old. And so my history of service comes from her. I worked at Polaroid, got fired for organizing an international boycott against South Africa, and that's why most people know me. But at heart, I'm an educator. And I realized that I didn't want to be a teacher when I graduated college because I graduated at the dawn of integration. That's all you could be. So I majored in med-tech, and when I realized what they did, I switched to chemistry. So I was a research chemist at Polaroid. I think 23, 24, when I helped organize this international boycott with my late husband, Ken Williams. So I stand on the backs of many, many women who've made a commitment for change. And so I'm honored to be here today, and thank you, Denise, for this wonderful program.
It is a privilege to know you. And with that, it's also a privilege to know Mary Stack from Cambridge Forum, who is going to bring us the rest of our program here. And Mary has been working with Bill and I and Amanda for the past several years in helping us to promote commerce in Harvard Square and helping us to bring the Cambridge Forum to the forefront. And this is just one more opportunity for us to do that. So Mary, please come and take it from here.
Okay, well, I'll stand and then I'll sit. So, International Women's Day was a couple of days ago. What a lot of people probably don't know is it had its origins in enormous social unrest, turbulence and debate among women in Western countries regarding oppressive working conditions in factories and the lack of voting rights. Well, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom met in The Hague in 1915 to protest, quote, the madness and horror of war. You see a repeat theme here. So more than a century later now, women can vote, they can hold office, and they have equal rights in theory, but that hasn't changed the reality that men claim almost complete, total political power. The words of the Ghanaian statesman, former Secretary-Chief of the UN, Kofi Annan, there is no policy more effective in promoting development, health and education than the empowerment of women and girls. No policy is more important in preventing conflict or achieving reconciliation after a conflict has ended. Well, just think what women gaining power with men at every level of existence could yield for the well-being of the world. And well-being, well, today's the topic for us, well-being and women. So I'm going to bring two wonderful women, active women, doing a lot of good work, to chat about wellness in general. Would you like to come up, Paris and Naisha? Okay, are we all live? Mike's.
Hello.
So you all know Paris Alston from Morning Edition on GBH News, which she presented for